Hello everyone, and welcome to Dear Heroic Life. We're excited to have you with us today. Before we dive into our tale, we'd love to know, where are you watching from right now? Your living room, a cozy cafe, or maybe you're on the go? Drop a comment below and share your story. The late afternoon sun streamed through the high windows of Keanu Reeves's house, casting elongated shadows across the hardwood floors. Outside, sturdy oak trees rustled in a mild Los Angeles breeze. Inside, the muffled sound of fists connecting with a heavy punching bag punctuated the otherwise peaceful air. Keanu stood shirtless and focused, delivering precise strikes to the bag, sweat glistening on his temples. A few feet away, a regal German shepherd named Shadow observed every motion, ears poised and eyes alert. Despite Keanu's intensity, the dog remained unwavering, as though studying a teacher's lesson or recalling old instincts. When Keanu paused to stretch, Shadow rose onto all fours and did something akin to a stretch himself, his nose tipping up and tail wagging. The corners of Keanu's mouth lifted in a soft smile. "That's some technique," he teased, dropping to one knee to pet Shadow. The shepherd's ears twitched in response, and for an instant, there was a tangible understanding between man and dog, an intimacy that went beyond commands or training. Keanu's expression briefly darkened as a memory flooded back to him. The moment he'd first laid eyes on this particular dog, not in a pet store but in a modest animal shelter on the outskirts of the city. Back then, Shadow hadn't bounded around with cheerful leaps. He'd been silent, almost stoic, as though harboring a history no one could guess. He remembered walking slowly between rows of cages, the smell of disinfectant and the soft whimper of puppies in the background. He stopped in front of one enclosure, drawn in by the quiet presence within. There sat a German shepherd, fur dulled by stress, ears half lowered, and gaze fixed on the concrete floor. Where other dogs whined for attention, Shadow barely reacted. A shelter worker, Nina, approached carrying a clipboard. "That's Shadow," she said, voice hushed. "He was turned over after his previous owner. Well, he was a police officer who died in the line of duty. Nobody else from the force could take him, and he hasn't bonded with any visitors yet." The gravity of that statement hung in the air. Keanu crouched, pressing his palm gently to the cage bars. "Hey there," he murmured. The shepherd glanced up, revealing eyes filled with an odd mixture of sorrow and discipline. After a long hesitation, Shadow rose, patting over to sniff his palm. In that brief moment, Keanu recognized something familiar, pain and resilience wrapped into one being. "I know what it's like to lose people," he said, voice low. "Maybe we can figure this out together." A quiet wag of the tail was the dog's only reply, but it was enough. Keanu straightened and turned to Nina. "He'll be coming home with me." She raised an eyebrow. "He might be difficult. He's intense." "I can handle intense," Keanu responded simply. Back in the present, Keanu offered Shadow a rub behind the ears. "Guess we both started over, huh?" he whispered. Shadow's gaze was unblinking but calm, as though acknowledging the shared path they'd walked. Eventually, Keanu left the makeshift gym for the kitchen, plucking his phone from the counter. The day's peacefulness reminded him he should head to the local market for groceries. With a quick whistle, he summoned Shadow, and the two exited the front door. Stepping onto sun-warmed pavement, they navigated crowded sidewalks of a bustling Los Angeles neighborhood. Tourists snapped photos of street art, locals sipped lattes at sidewalk cafes, and somewhere, music played from a distant busker. Amid the swirl of city life, Keanu remained largely unnoticed, hat pulled low. Shadow padded alongside obediently, but each flick of his ears suggested a watchfulness that never slept. Across the street, two men lingered at a newspaper stand. Their names, though Keanu would not learn them until much later, were Leo and Chris. Leo, tall with a hardened expression, nudged Chris, who appeared younger and more uncertain. Together, they stared at Keanu and Shadow. "That's him," Leo muttered, eyes gleaming with an opportunistic edge. "Keanu Reeves. We might get a good payday if we play this right." Chris frowned, gaze shifting from Keanu to the muscular German shepherd. "What about the dog?" Looks trained, man. Leo shrugged. A dog's a dog. We'll handle it. A block away, Shadow's ears perked faintly. Perhaps the dog picked up subtle body language or recognized a threat. But Keanu was preoccupied with selecting fresh produce at an outdoor stall. He noticed Shadow's unusual tension but chalked it up to city noise, offering a gentle pat as if to say, "Everything's fine, buddy." Shadow, however, remained fixated, as though perceiving something sinister in the men's cold stares. Keanu moved on, purchasing a loaf of bread, bottled water, and some fruit, unaware that, behind him, Leo and Chris were already mapping out a plan for the night ahead. Keanu Reeves's house sat nestled behind tall hedges and a sturdy fence, a modern, minimalist design that offered privacy without flaunting. Tucked away from the main street, it was easily overlooked by passerby. Yet as evening fell, a metallic click echoed in the silent yard, something not part of the usual nightly routine. Inside the living room, Keanu was leafing through a stack of scripts, an expression of quiet concentration on his face. Shadow rested at his feet, muzzle on paws, eyes half closed. When you've lived with a dog as attentive as Shadow, you get used to small signals. So when Shadow's ears shot up, Keanu immediately paused, script forgotten. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, following the dog's intense stare to the sliding glass doors at the back. The yard was dark except for a soft garden light. He saw no movement, but Shadow's body had tensed, as though ready to spring into action. Slowly, Keanu rose, patting Shadow to reassure him. "Probably a raccoon," he said out loud, though he couldn't ignore a subtle unease. Outside, beyond the glass, two silhouettes crouched near the fence. It was Leo and Chris. They had approached quietly, flashlight beams kept low, scanning for signs of alarm. Chris's nerves were evident. His voice shook as he mumbled, "You sure about this?" "The dog." Leo cut him off with a hiss. "Relax. We'll just do a quick in and out. Grab what we can. He probably has expensive stuff. Focus on the job." Inside, Shadow stood at the glass door, nose nearly touching it, ears pinned forward. With a low, rumbling growl, he indicated that whoever was outside was no friendly nocturnal critter. Keanu's heart kicked into a faster rhythm. He grabbed his phone, checking a small screen that displayed his security cameras. The feed showed nothing but static. The camera lines had been cut. "Not good," Keanu murmured, mind racing. "Stay with me, Shadow." He flicked off the living room lamp, plunging the house into darkness. The plan was to keep advantage of stealth. If intruders were indeed lurking, he needed the element of surprise. Outside, Leo had advanced to the back door, producing a slim tool from his pocket. The faint scratch of metal on metal reached Shadow's sensitive ears. The dog let out a half-bark, half-growl, alerting Keanu to imminent entry. The lock gave way, and the door slid open a crack. Leo, face taut with excitement, turned to Chris. "Stay behind me. We do this quietly." Chris swallowed hard, stepping in after him. The interior was pitch black, shadows distorting their view. They crept across the threshold, oblivious to the silent figure behind an adjacent wall. Shadow was on standby, and next to him, Keanu, holding a sturdy flashlight like a makeshift baton. Leo's voice, hushed but confident, echoed slightly in the open space. "Keanu Reeves, come out, he taunted with a sneer. "Might as well not make this difficult." Keanu exhaled quietly, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He'd faced dangerous stunts on set, sure, but this was real life, with no safety net. He whispered to Shadow, "We handle them, but be careful." The dog's ears twitched, as though understanding. Suddenly, an overhead light in the adjacent corridor flickered. Chris jumped, fumbling the small bag in his hand. "This place is creepy," he mumbled, wiping sweat from his brow. Shadow took that as a cue. With a burst of speed, he lunged from behind the wall, letting out a snarling bark that reverberated in the night-still house. Leo spun around, cursing. A flash of canine teeth was all Chris saw before Shadow's heavy paws knocked him off balance, sending him sprawling to the floor with a yelp. Keanu seized the moment. Emerging from the dark, He aimed his flashlight beam right at Leo's face, effectively blinding him. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Who are you, and what do you want?" Leo threw up an arm to shield his eyes. "We want—" He didn't finish. Shadow growled again, standing protectively between the men and Keanu. Chris, pinned by Shadow's weight on his chest, let out a fearful cry. "Get him off me, man. I can't move." Leo tried to step closer, brandishing the cutting tool. But Shadow whipped around with lightning reflexes, unleashing a savage snarl that made Leo freeze in place. In the gloom, the dog's eyes glinted like two burning coals, and the fur along his spine bristled dangerously. "Stop!" Keanu barked, voice level but commanding. "Drop it." Leo hesitated, hating the vulnerability but seeing no choice. He let the tool clatter to the floor. Shadow advanced a step, ensuring there would be no second attempts. Chris coughed from the floor, pinned and panting. We just wanted." He glanced at Leo, searching for words. "Shut up," hissed Leo. "This isn't how it was supposed to go." Keanu rolled his eyes, flicking on a lamp to chase away the darkness. "You broke into my house to steal, right? And maybe worse." He nodded to Shadow, who maintained a tense stance. "You messed with the wrong dog." For a moment, Leo's gaze flicked to Shadow. "That dog, he's not normal," he said, breath uneven. "Moves like some kind of trained killer." Keanu pursed his lips, ignoring the jab. He fished his phone out, stepping carefully around them to dial 911. "We'll let the police sort it out. Just don't do anything stupid." The house's newfound stillness was punctured by Chris's ragged breathing and Shadow's low, rumbling growl. In the distance, faint sirens began to wail. That night, the intruders realized they had gravely underestimated the quiet movie star and the formidable German shepherd who, even now, seemed to channel skills far beyond typical obedience. Police lights cast dancing reds and blues through the windows as two squad cars pulled up to Keanu's property. Officers hopped out, weapons readied, advancing cautiously around the perimeter. Inside, the living room scene was tense but under control. Shadow guarded the men on the floor. Leo and Chris, who hadn't dared move an inch since the dog pinned them, followed, quickly assessing the situation. "Hands where we can see them," Delgado ordered the intruders. Leo and Chris complied, slow and grudging. Seeing that Shadow still bared teeth, Delgado paused, gaze snapping to the dog's intense stare. Something flickered in the officer's expression. "That dog," he whispered, "looks so familiar. Reeves, call him off so we can safely cuff these two." Keanu crouched, placing a hand on Shadow's shoulder. "Down, boy. I've got them covered." He murmured the command softly, and the shepherd eased back, though never fully removing his gaze from the men. With the tension somewhat lowered, Delgado and Gonzalez moved in, pressing the intruders face down and securing them with handcuffs. Chris let out a whimper. "It was a mistake, man. We thought he was an easy target." Delgado snorted. "Some brilliant logic." He glanced at Keanu. "Are you all right, sir? Any injuries?" "I'm fine," Keanu replied, massaging the back of his neck. "Thanks to Shadow." Officer Delgado nodded, stepping closer to the dog. "Shadow, huh?" He studied the shepherd's face, then turned to Keanu with a spark of recognition. "If this is the dog I think it is, he used to be one of the best K9s on the force, trained by an officer named Brian Ellis. That officer died about a year ago. I never thought I'd see Shadow again." Keanu's breath caught. Pieces of the puzzle fell into place. "So you're telling me he's not just any old rescue dog?" "That's right," Delgado said, a hint of pride in his tone. "He was basically unstoppable in his prime. Took on advanced tactical training, specialized in suspect apprehension. It's rumored he saved Ellis's life more than once." His gaze drifted to the subdued intruders. "It's no wonder he handled these two so cleanly." Leo's eyes widened, realization hitting him. "We got taken down by a police dog," he muttered, incredulous. Chris, pinned by Officer Gonzalez, cast a miserable look at Shadow. "We never stood a chance," he groaned. Keanu ruffled the shepherd's fur, reflecting on the day he adopted him from the shelter. That quiet seriousness, the precise movements, even the knack for opening doors. It all made sense now. "You've been a hero all along," he said softly, patting Shadow's neck. Moments later, the police escorted Leo and Chris outside, stashing them in the back of the squad cars. Gonzalez lingered to gather Keanu's statement, scribbling in a small notebook. Meanwhile, Delgado kept glancing back at Shadow with a nostalgic smile. He always had a knack for taking the lead. He mused. "We missed him on the force, but I'm glad he found a good home." Shadow stood quietly by Keanu's side, as though overseeing the conclusion of events. In the hush that followed, Delgado raised an eyebrow. "Would you ever consider letting him do K9 demonstrations for local youth events? He's still technically retired, but it might do some good. People would love to see him in action, and it could help recruit new dog handlers." Keanu rubbed his chin. "It's an interesting idea, but I'll let Shadow decide," he joked, glancing at the dog. "He's earned his quiet life, though maybe we can appear somewhere if it helps others appreciate these amazing animals." The notion left Delgado grinning. "No pressure, but if you're open to it, call me." After the officers finished, they removed the intruders from the property. Quiet fell once more, the hush of post-chaos. The adrenaline that had surged through Keanu finally ebbed, leaving him with a wave of gratitude and a flicker of awe at his own dog's skill. "Shadow, come on," he murmured, leading the shepherd back inside. "We've got some celebrating to do." Later that night, Keanu lounged on the couch, a soft lamp illuminating the living room. Shadow lay at his feet, muzzle propped on the man's ankle. "So you were a top K9, he mused, swirling a bit of water in a glass. "Guess that explains a lot, like how you pick locks, track sense, or that door trick you pulled the other day." Shadow let out a quiet huff, tail thumping once against the floor. The dog's calm presence steadied Keanu's mind. Looking around at the minimalistic furniture and the subdued ambience, Keanu realized it felt less lonely than it once did. A spark of contentment filled his chest as he recalled how they'd come together, each carrying unseen scars. Outside, city lights glimmered, and sirens occasionally wailed far off. But here, within these walls, there was an unlikely partnership forged out of heartbreak and new beginnings. The thought made Keanu smile. "You know," he whispered, leaning forward to scratch Shadow's ears, "today you showed them what real loyalty looks like." Shadow's gaze flicked up, intelligence shining behind those dark eyes. And in that shared moment, no words needed, Keanu believed they understood each other perfectly. Within days, word spread about Keanu Reeves's dramatic home intrusion and how his rescued German Shepherd single-handedly foiled the break-in. Though Keanu had wanted to keep it quiet, a neighbor glimpsing the police lights at midnight ended up chatting with the local news. Soon enough, tabloids spun sensational headlines about movie star and ex-police dog's night of danger. Walking around Los Angeles became a bit more complicated for Keanu. Fans recognized him more often, curious to see if the heroic dog was by his side. Sometimes they'd call out, "Hey, where's that super shepherd, Mr. Reeves?" Or, "Is it true your dog used to be a K9? Though Keanu cherished privacy, he handled these questions politely. Shadow seemed unfazed, guiding Keanu through the city's hustle with an almost regal bearing. People parted for them on the sidewalk, respectful or occasionally awestruck. Despite the new attention, Keanu's main priority was ensuring Shadow remained comfortable. After all, the dog had been a police officer before losing his original partner. He'd earned a life of calm, not endless crowds snapping phone pictures. One afternoon, Officer Delgado reached out again, inviting Keanu and Shadow to a small event at the local community center. "We're hosting AK9 Appreciation Day," Delgado explained over the phone. "We'd love to have Shadow come show kids a few simple demonstrations, nothing intense, just to inspire them about rescue dogs and how ex-police dogs can adapt to new families." Keanu hesitated, glancing at Shadow, who lay dozing on a plush rug. "I'm not sure. He's been through so much. I don't want to stress him." "It's low-key," Delgado assured. "Just a handful of families. Maybe a short Q&A. Think about it." After hanging up, Keanu studied Shadow. "What do you think, buddy? Up for a cameo appearance?" The shepherd yawned, then rose to give his tail a wag. Keanu interpreted it as a casual yes. "All right then," he murmured with a smile. "Let's do some good." On the day of the event, the community center buzzed with excited chatter. Parents and children filled rows of folding chairs. Posters of dogs in various K9 gear lined the walls, and the faint smell of hot dogs from a snack stand wafted through the open doors. Keanu parked discreetly, stepping out with Shadow on a simple black leash. They slipped in through a side entrance, hoping to avoid an overwhelming crowd. Still, a ripple of recognition passed through the audience once Delgado introduced them on stage. "And now, everyone, I present someone you might know, and a dog whose story will inspire you." A hush fell as Keanu walked up, Shadow at his side, posture calm but alert. Keanu kept it informal, speaking into a handheld mic. "I'm no dog trainer," he began lightly, "but I do live with one impressive dog. Meet Shadow." He gestured, and Shadow advanced to the front, scanning the assembly with those intelligent eyes. A little girl in the front row, maybe 6 years old, asked the first question. "Did your dog really fight bad guys?" Her pigtails shook with excitement. Keanu crouched. "Yes, a while back. Shadow was trained as a K9 for the police. He used those skills recently. He protected me when 2 men broke into my house." The crowd broke into quiet applause or murmurs of amazement. Another older boy chimed in. "What kind of training does he have? Can he still do it?" "From what I've seen, yes," Keanu replied, exchanging a smile with Delgado. "He's strong, disciplined, and possibly even knows how to open doors if he wants to." That drew gasps and giggles. Shadow tilted his head at the mention of door opening, as though acknowledging the joke. Delgado joined them, explaining how K9 dogs often maintain their skill sets, which can remain sharp if they're used and reinforced. "They're used to structure," Delgado said. "They love having a task, even if it's small." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "Shadow's taught me a lot, too. About resilience, about trusting again. He lost his first partner, but it didn't break him. And now we're building a new life together. That's pretty special." The audience clapped, and the session turned into a demonstration. Delgado placed a small rubber toy for Shadow to find among scattered objects on stage. Without hesitation, the dog marched forth, sniffing methodically until he pinpointed the item. The watchers applauded, some even offering standing ovations. Shadow took it in stride, trotting back to Keanu with a low wag of his tail. A Q&A followed, kids asking about dog diets, how to approach a retired K9, whether Shadow liked chew toys. Keanu answered with patience, occasionally deferring to Delgado for the more official or technical details. Throughout, Shadow displayed an uncanny calm, letting children pet his shoulder or gently stroke his fur. Though, with K9 discipline, he never fully relaxed until the event ended. Finally, after polite goodbyes, Keanu guided Shadow back toward the parking lot. He paused, noticing a quiet boy lingering near the door, eyes brimming with tears. Approaching gently, Keanu asked, "Hey, you okay?" The boy sniffed. "My dad was a policeman too," he whispered. He's gone now." Keanu's chest tightened, recalling Shadow's story. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said softly. "This dog, he understands that kind of loss. If you want to say hi, I'm sure he'd love to meet you." The boy approached, trembling hand outstretched. Shadow stood steady as a statue, eyes full of empathy. The boy's fingers grazed the shepherd's head, and a tiny sob escaped him, replaced moments later by a brave smile. "Thank you," he breathed. "He's amazing." Keanu gave the boy's shoulder a comforting squeeze. "You're amazing, too. Keep that strength." It was only a fleeting exchange, but it resonated deeply. Two individuals bound by an absent presence, forging a small moment of healing through a dog's quiet comfort. That alone validated Keanu's decision to bring Shadow here today. As time passed, the story of Keanu Reeves and his ex-police dog, Shadow, became a heartwarming footnote in a city often saturated with sensational headlines. For Keanu, life settled into a new routine. Movie projects, script readings, daily errands, Shadow was present at each juncture, seamlessly blending an old life in law enforcement with a gentle devotion to his new owner. One bright Saturday morning, the day promised sunshine and mild breezes. Keanu decided to invite a small circle of friends to his home for a simple backyard brunch. Nothing fancy, just close companions, fruit platters, and quiet music. Shadow, ever the silent guardian, trotted about the yard, occasionally pausing to investigate a butterfly or greet a guest with a polite nudge. Friends marveled at the shepherd's impeccable manners. "He's more disciplined than any dog I've met," observed Rebecca, an old friend from Keanu's earliest acting days. Another pal, James, teased, "Isn't it intimidating to have a better fighter than you in the house?" Keanu grinned. "You have no idea. He'll open a door if I'm taking too long, or sometimes if I'm not paying attention. He vanishes into a room and reappears behind me as if checking on me." Across the yard, Shadow glanced their way, ears flicking as though aware they were talking about him. The guests chuckled, finishing slices of melon and sipping iced coffee. That was the dog's charm, never intrusive, but always watchful. Mid-afternoon, as the brunch wound down, the mail carrier arrived with a small pile of letters and packages. Keanu gathered them, flipping through envelopes until one gave him pause. A letter from the local police department. Shadow barked once, sensing a shift in Keanu's mood. "Easy boy," Keanu murmured, opening the letter. It was a short, polite note from Officer Delgado, inviting them to an official recognition ceremony for local K-9 units, retired and active. They wanted to honor Shadow posthumously for the years he served under Officer Brian Ellis. They're awarding him a citation for bravery and dedicated service, Keanu read aloud to his friends. A hush fell over the group. "Wow," Rebecca said softly. "That's well-deserved." Keanu's gaze drifted to Shadow, who was lying near the fence, nose upturned to catch a faint breeze. "He's not just my hero. He was a hero long before I knew him." Then, reading further, "They also want me to speak a bit, if I'm willing," he sighed, remembering how Shadows parted ways with his first partner under tragic circumstances. But if it brought closure or respect to the dog's legacy, maybe it was worth it. A week later, Keanu found himself standing on a small stage set up outside the city's police headquarters. Rows of uniformed officers and curious onlookers had gathered. Posters displayed K-9 faces, each accompanied by the dog's name and a short biography. Shadows was included, though his portion remained brief, served with Officer Brian Ellis, specialized in suspect apprehension, retired due to the officer's passing. Officer Delgado introduced Keanu, who led Shadow forward. Cameras clicked rapidly. The shepherd wore a simple harness, unbothered by the applause or the swirl of uniformed men and women. Keanu cleared his throat at the podium. "Shadow has taught me about perseverance and unconditional loyalty," he began. "I didn't train him. He trained me in a sense, showing me what unwavering devotion really looks like." A ripple of smiles traversed the crowd. Delgado stepped up with a framed citation, presenting it to Keanu with a handshake before gently attaching a small honorary badge to Shadow's harness. The crowd clapped, and for a moment, the shepherd's tail wagged, acknowledging the warmth but staying composed. When the ceremony concluded, Delgado ushered them over for a photo. "It's not every day we get to celebrate a dog who continued serving even in retirement," he said, patting Shadow's side. "What he did during your break-in, that was textbook K-9 discipline." Keanu ruffled Shadow's ears, voice thick with emotion. His old partner would be proud. "I hope we're doing right by him." The dog tilted his head, an expression that in Keanu's eyes said everything. Acceptance, quiet strength, readiness to continue forward. In the following days, social media buzzed with images of Keanu and Shadow at the ceremony. Hashtags praising rescue dogs and ex-police canines trended briefly. For Keanu, though, the real reward was seeing how comfortable Shadow had become with his new life, snoozing by the fireplace after a day's short walk, never hesitating to leap into protection if needed. From the humble beginnings of adopting a silent, haunted dog at a shelter, to discovering the dog's police background, to forging a bond that overcame intruders and earned public admiration, Keanu's journey with Shadow revealed how destiny sometimes brings together two souls who need healing, guiding them toward a shared future of trust and quiet heroism. Each night, as the city's lights shimmered beyond the hedges, Keanu would often reflect on the improbable chain of events. He had never expected a rescue dog to be an ex-K9, nor had he anticipated facing criminals in his own home. Yet here they were, both survivors, forging new paths. And in the hush of the living room, with script set aside, Keanu would whisper to his loyal friend, "Thanks for staying, partner." A gentle wag of the tail would follow, Shadow's unwavering affirmation that yes, this was exactly where they belonged. Within the sprawl of Los Angeles, countless stories intersect day by day. Some end in heartbreak, others in triumph. For Keanu Reeves and his German Shepherd, Shadow, it all began with a chance encounter at an unremarkable animal shelter. Keanu only sensed something unique in that silent, stoic dog, unaware of the heroic legacy embedded in every muscle, every keen glance. What followed was more than a standard adoption. It evolved into a testament of healing and purpose, each partner lending strength to the other in ways neither foresaw. A tranquil home life suited them. Keanu found a quiet companion in the watchful shepherd. Shadow rediscovered family in the warm presence of a gentle owner who offered both stability and love. Yet destiny tested their bond. When criminals, misguided by greed, broke into that peaceful house, Shadow's old instincts emerged. In swift, disciplined moves, he defended Keanu, foiling the break-in and securing their safety. Only then did the final piece slot into place. Shadow wasn't just any dog. He was a trained ex-police K9, once partnered with a fallen officer. He'd never lost his readiness to protect. In the aftermath, the city marveled at Shadow's bravery, culminating in an official tribute that recognized his service. But for Keanu, the real reward lay in the simple, everyday moments. Script readings where Shadow dozed at his feet, early morning walks through the quiet streets, and that silent assurance in the shepherd's eyes, promising, "I'm here for you." Their story resonates as a reminder that second chances aren't only for humans. Sometimes, it's the abandoned or the overlooked that hold untapped courage. And sometimes, a dog that once safeguarded a police officer can find renewed purpose protecting a movie star, proving that loyalty, once forged, can outlast any darkness.